Hey guys, Rollout here, and welcome back to Builder's Block. It's been a long week, and this episode's a little late, but we're here, and we'll be right back on track for the next one. We've got another mixed bag of an episode this time, I think. Projects that I'm proud of, and ones I'm not so proud of in equal parts, but hopefully they'll inspire you all the same. If you want to help keep that inspiration coming, you can consider supporting me on Patreon. You can also like this video, share it with your friends, but with that out of the way, the show must go on. On the first day, I built this kind of unsettling Birdman creature. It sort of reminds me of like a Jim Henson puppet from Labyrinth or The Dark Crystal, and something about it is just kinda gross. It has wings, it's got a tail. Its arms and legs are built using lever joints, and it gives this, like, disgusting organic look. It's got these, like, two-fingered pinchy hands. The most interesting thing about the build, I think, is that the head is made using one of those handheld stud launcher pieces, but I removed the trigger and added this like long Squidward nose, and it just gives him these like hollow, depressing eyes. Another interesting thing is how his body is built. He uses an Overwatch gun and a Travis brick, along with some cheese slopes there to give him the pot belly. The tail is attached using one of those thin U-clips in the bottom of the brick there. On the next day, I wanted to build a slightly more obscure dimensional Robo. This is dimensional Robo Dai Wolf. It's not a very significant card. It doesn't form a larger robot or anything like that. But something about robot wolf with big old gun and wings on his back just sort of spoke to me, and I wanted to take a stab at it. I went once again with a relatively small scale, and that proved to be quite limiting. The teeth are supposed to be yellow. There's supposed to be like yellow vents in the ears. Details like that I couldn't quite cram in. There's supposed to be more curved, swooping details on the side of the face there that I struggled to fit in as well. The way the head attaches, I think, is a little bit disappointing to me, because I wanted the head to swing up and down, and that meant I had to sacrifice the look a little bit. I think the neck is supposed to be a little bit more substantial. The head is supposed to be a little bit less thin here. This kind of looks skeletal in some ways that I'm not too happy with. But I thought it was good enough to at least continue the project. Here is the rest of the neck. You can see it's built around a Travis brick, and it uses those 2x1s with the rail element on the side just to make it a little bit more substantial and to make it a little bit more rounded, I guess. I really like this aspect of the design, and if nothing else, this is what made me want to continue building the rest of the body. On the next day, I went ahead and built the infamous wing gun. You can see the bottom section is like a big laser cannon, and then it has like either a smaller cannon on top, or maybe that's some kind of sight. And then you just got wings strapped to the side that let this wolf fly. Sure, why not? That's how physics works, I guess. It's silly, but it's the kind of ridiculous that I love. You can see that the construction of this gun is very, very simple, and it's not the most solid thing in the world, but this is something that I wanted to be done more than I wanted to be particularly good. This is a side project. This is something I built on a whim, so my standards for solid connections are not quite as high as usual, but I think it looks good at the very least. Here it is just kind of strapped to the rest of the model, so I could gauge the scale, I could gauge where it should be placed. You can see I attached it quite simply there, but I just did this to see how that would look. To be perfectly honest, though, at this point, I was getting a little bored with this model. I needed a break. I needed to switch gears and build something completely different. So on the next day, I built a robot pirate. Now, I don't know if you see it, but personally, I see this as a female character. There's something about the hair and the hips that just give me those vibes. So I like to imagine this as the queen of the robot 7 Cs or something like that. And I think it looks pretty cool. This was an excuse just to use some newer elements that I have not used before, specifically this anchor piece that is on the tip of her staff there. Her hair is also this very interesting detailed spider element. I'm not entirely sure where that came from, but I bought a couple because I wanted to play around with it. I think it looks pretty cool. I'm also very happy with like the color blocking on this model. I think that the blue and the gold and the gray and black all look really good together. The silver sprinkled in is also very nice, and I also like how I balanced the 2 different shades of brown. She has this wagon wheel on her back. I added that because I thought it looked cool. It's an interesting design element, and it's there for no other reason. You can see the other end of her staff has this like silver missile piece. That's also a new element I wanted to use. It kind of looks like a face to me, and I'd really like to make that the face of some very small robot, but nothing I've done with that piece has been up to my standards until now, and it's just a very simple detail on the end of her staff, of course. I think the most interesting technique here is how I attached the pirate hat to this spider element here. I stuck one of those clear accessory minifigure holder pieces into the bottom, and the bar on that piece like fits into the cross on the bottom of a hat element. So I think that's a very cool technique that you might have never seen before. On the next day, I went ahead and continued the Dai Wolf project to completion. So here is Dimensional Robo Dai Wolf, and he is sure good enough. Nothing about him is super surprising or particularly interesting. It's a very, very straightforward build, but it's recognizable and it's relatively articulate, and that's all I ask for, I think. The body is very, very simple, very bare bones. I took the simplest route in that regard because the card left a lot up to interpretation. You can't really see exactly how the gun attaches to the body, so I could just sort of do whatever I wanted with that, and I went with the simplest option because it was easy, but it looks good in its own right, I think. Like, even if it's technically inaccurate to some other concept or line art that's out there, I think it looks fine on its own. The way the legs attach is a little bit lazy and a little bit loose. These legs aren't the most solid thing in the world, but they do hold the wolf up. And I'm fine with that. He can, you can put him on a stand and get him into some poses, and it's fine. It's fine. It's good enough. Here he is with some of the other dimensional robos, along with his fellow critical trigger, Dai Battles, and then a more humanoid robot, Kaizard there. This picture's weird because it doesn't quite look like it, but Dai Wolf is a fair bit more massive than Kaizard. There's a lot more pieces involved. This is one of the larger dimensional robos that I have built, but something about the fact that it's on all fours makes it look a little bit smaller. But right alongside Dai Mariner, this is one of the largest dimensional robos. So far, because on the next day, I started building Dimensional Robo Dai Dragon, the big boy, the largest piece of Super Dimensional Robo Daiusha. I started with the head. This is the element that forms the shield of Daiusha. Then the rest of him just forms a giant wing pack on his back. This is going to be absolutely massive. I started building this using these feathery elements. Of course, you can see that Dai Dragon has these like white details painted on the head, and The only way I could think of capturing that was using these Chima wing elements, and I used those elements to sort of size this whole model. That was my basis for this. And I think it looks pretty good, but it does mean that this is going to be huge. It's relatively in scale with the rest of the dimensional robos, I think, as well. Like, Dai Dragon is supposed to be very massive. You can see he's got this like horn on the front here. It's kind of a weird detail. It also like serves as his mouth. Dai Dragon's a very weird creature, but when this transforms into Daiusha, that is supposed to fold up onto the shield itself, and you can see that that isn't quite possible right now. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to rework that so that it is functional, or if I'm just going to, build it alternatively once I finally decide to get to Daiusha. But whatever the case, I think it looks okay. Once again, in its own right, on its own. Here it is from the back. You can see that like the ear panels on the head here are attached using those newer minifigure superhero stand elements in clear, just like that accessory holder piece that I used in the bottom of the pirate hat. I wish those came in more colors. Like, I'd really like some more solid colors for these pieces, because they are quite useful. Like, this technique here, that angle that this is able to achieve is crazy, and I would love to do more of that, but it just sort of annoys me a little bit that I have to like add clear to color schemes that I don't want clear in. It's a personal issue, I guess, but yeah, the bottom line is this piece is really good and I'd like to use it more. Here is the head of Dai Dragon along with Dai Mariner, which was previously the largest dimensional robo that I have built. If I were to estimate, Dai Dragon's wingspan will be about like 1.5 feet long, which will make it the largest thing I have built in a long, long time. I'm gonna give it a shot. We'll see how it goes. Wish me luck. Is this the first step towards me building in a larger scale on a regular basis? Time will tell. It all depends on how well this project goes, I guess. Special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, especially my leader class patrons, Valraven and Beyond the Brick. I really appreciate it. Until next time, this has been Rollout, signing off.